So Nimona is a 2023 movie. It was just released this year. I say 2023 movie, although it was likely in development for years before. This was an animated movie originally at Blue Sky Studios before they shut down. And then the project was in development hell for a while. Basically what happened is I believe 80% of the animation was complete and it did not have a distributor. So the film kind of just sat there waiting to be picked up. And eventually Netflix did pick it up and now it's out there. And it has some really talented actors attached to it. Chloe Grace Moretz is in it. Dev Patel is in it, and it really is a unique story. I actually went into this with a lot of hope. I love animated films. I love animated stories because when you have animation, you can kind of tell any type of story, and it's not going to matter. What you can do with visual constraints. Like, look at The Flash. I just love mentioning movies now that people shit on. Like, The Flash was not a great movie, and the CG wasn't really good, so it had a lot going against it. But with animation, you can pretty much do anything you want. And that was a little bit of the problem with Nimona. I felt that there was so much world building I wanted to see, and there wasn't a lot I got to see. It reminds me a bit of a Disney movie called Raya and the Last Dragon. Now, both of these are fantasy movies. They take place in alternate worlds that are fantasy worlds. They have good characters. They have really, great potential. However, I feel that both of those films don't really capture, what they intend to do. I feel like you could just be doing so much more with this movie, Nimona. And it was kind of disappointing. So let's go into that. The movie follows a knight baluster who's played by Dev Patel. And he is going to be knighted at this ceremony. And the movie takes place in this weird kind of alternate future. And that's another thing that's kind of odd. It has this Blade Runner meets like Princess Bride aesthetic, which also isn't really explored so much. I think you could just have explored why this world developed this way. They have a really brief, opening exposition thing, which I don't like. I mean, if you have to explain in your first 10 minutes who the person who created this world is, and then that person isn't even that important. It just kind of explains how this world came to be in 10 seconds, and then we're just there, and we're in this futuristic city full of knights, and it has this very high fantasy medieval setting, but there's just something about it that doesn't really click. And I feel like even a good movie like a movie like Zootopia kind of nails the idea of here's a interesting blend between two worlds. Here's New York City meets just animals living there, and they kind of really explore that. Elemental is really bland, like the new Pixar movie. It really just says, here's a bunch of elements, and hey, they live in a city. It's beautiful. Everything looks beautiful, but, there's nothing else to it except here's an interesting concept. What if elements lived in a city? Oh, that's the movie. So Nimona kind of falls into that territory where you have this, really, I guess, interesting concept of what if there was a futuristic medieval type world, but you don't really explore it at all, and that completely left me detached. I think also another thing that's interesting about the movie is it does have a lot of potential, and unlike Disney, which kind of loves to say, hey, we support LGBTQ, we have a character in this who's gay, but then they'll just cut it out in the release for overseas, or they have a 1-second thing. This film actually has a pretty intrinsic plot point with two characters who are in love, and they're both men, and I feel that's great for them to actually just put that right up front and center. I'm not saying, you could have a whole movie like Strange World where you kind of just have an overall total meh movie with just bad characters, no interesting plot, and then you just kind of shoehorn in that kind of romance story, which they did. In Nimona, it feels very prevalent to the plot. It's about a knight who is, that whole point with him just having a boyfriend isn't even part of the story, oh, he has a boyfriend. It's just there. It's natural, and I didn't mind that at all. What I just minded was how there's no kind of flow to the story overall. It just feels like they missed the mark with how can I make just interesting characters. The main guy, Ballister, is great, is a good character, voiced by Dev Patel. He's the kind of doesn't want to get involved in this adventure. He's framed. That's the plot of the movie. He's framed for killing a queen, and it just doesn't go anywhere more interesting beyond that. Besides, there isn't really an interesting reason why he was framed. And then on top of that, you introduce this shape-shifting character played by Chloe Grace Moretz, who's great. It totally fits her personality character. I thought they like modeled the character after her. I doubt that, but no, she's really great and fits the character. But her character just doesn't have like any depth beyond just being that kind of fun supporting sidekick, and that's a shame because there's so much potential here for an interesting story, especially between the two guys like Ballister and his boyfriend. I feel like they could have explained more just like why they're loyal to this kingdom, or why when the boyfriend's framed he has to like go and stop that, but they don't really like go into that. It just is so surface level. And the villain also is completely surface level. It's literally just a character named the Director. They're like, the Director did this, the Director, the Director. So, it's a shame because you have things that Disney isn't even doing right, and you could be doing them right, but I feel like they just kind of get caught in this high concept fantasy world. That's why I compare it to Raya and the Last Dragon, because Raya and the Last Dragon was 90-ish minutes and had so much world building that just like, it was a headache. This movie has nothing. It's just like a race through a city, and you're constantly being barraged by like, just like the chemistry between Dev Patel's Ballister and Nimona is the highlight. But that's it. You have a movie called Nimona, and you don't even explore Nimona, really. It's just such an odd film, in my opinion. And I guess it goes into that realm of, oh, you people are afraid of what they don't understand because she's a shapeshifter and people are scared of her. But they really just don't explore that in a meaningful way. And there have been hundreds of movies that have explored this, well before. If they had, introduced a pretty tight central mystery, had a more compelling villain, and just given more depth to these characters, it would have been great. It just is really surface level. So that's my opinion on Netflix's Nimona. Let me know what you guys think, if you've seen it or whatever, if you plan on watching it. So take it easy, guys.